Yeah, the meeting is in order, and we have a quorum. Let us start with the introduction. I'll start with Russ.
Thank you, Musa. Ross Clendenin, SCTA, Marketing and Communications, just here to support the committee.
Rick.
I'm Rick Lutman. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County.
Good. Shana.
Shana Gauze with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Tom.
Tom Banning, representing the 3rd District.
Dennis.
Dennis Carter, representing Sonoma County Alliance.
Kathleen.
The Area Agency on Aging.
Brian.
Brian Ling, representing the 4th District.
Dana.
Dana Trey with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
David.
David Ripperdo with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Natalie.
Natalie Higley with the North Bay Labor Council.
Gina, she was here and not back, like we'll get back to her later. Chris.
Chris Barney with Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Jake.
Jake McKenzie, representing Sonoma County Transportation and Land Use Coalition.
Tanya.
Tanya Nara, the Director of Climate Programs for the Regional Climate Protection Authority.
Mark.
Mark Soylan, representing the 2nd District.
Jerry.
And Jerry, representing the North Bay Electric Auto Association.
Eris.
Eris Weaver, Executive Director of the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition.
Andrew. Not hearing from Andrew.
I was invited here to listen to by Russ. I was interested in joining the committee. Didn't realize how people were chosen, but I am part of the Transportation and Land Coalition group, like Jake.
And who is this?
This is Andrew Smith.
Oh, got it. Thank you. Jeff Blake.
Hi, I'm Jeff Blakesley. I'm representing the Sonoma County, Save Sonoma County Roads, SOS Roads.
Okay. Nancy.
Oh, hi, Nancy Adams, City of Santa Rosa.
James.
James Cameron with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Orlando.
Hi, this is Orlando Ramirez, new transportation planner with Caltrans District 4.
Did I miss anyone? If I missed anyone, please speak up.
You missed me. My audio left.
Yeah, Gina, please.
I'm Gina Erickson. I wear many hats. I work for the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody else? Okay, I'm Musa Abbasi with Transpedia Consulting Engineers, and I represent Santa Rosa Metro Chamber. Let us move forward with our agenda. Any public comments? I hear none. Do you see any hands risen, Drew, for public comments?
No, I do not see any hands raised for public comment on items not on the regular agenda.
Okay, thank you. Let us move to approval of the October minutes. Any motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion, Jake McKenzie.
Thank you. Any discussion? We will put it in the for vote, any opposition, or absence for approving the minutes. I see Jerry, but I don't hear you.
I abstain. I was in the last meeting.
Okay. Any other abstentions or a no vote? I see none. So the minutes passed with one, with Jerry abstaining. So I'll move to item 4, Measure M, project presentation. Shauna, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I am going to share my screen real quick. So let me pull that up. Slideshow. Drew, am I on the right?
Switch over. Almost there.
Every single time.
There we are.
Thank you. I did it before the meeting and then it switched back. So try. So thank you for having me. This month, it's SCTA's turn to present the Measure M projects, and I will be speaking about the 116-121 intersection improvement project. Start with the basics for those who may not be familiar with this project. It's part of the Measure M Local Streets and Roads program and is located at the intersection of State Highways 116 and 121 and the county-owned Bono Road. The improvements include installing a roundabout at the intersection, currently controlled by a 4-way blinking red light. The project will also relocate the park and ride lot from the southeast quadrant to the northeast quadrant of the project area. And in addition to the roundabout, a shared path and related facilities for pedestrians and bicyclists will also be constructed. For orientation purposes, the project is located, as I mentioned, just southwest of the city of Sonoma at the intersections of Highway 116 and 121, also known as Arnold Drive and Fremont Drive, where they intersect with Bono Road. This slide represents a little more graphic understanding of what's being installed. There's the roundabout here, and you can see the bicycle and pedestrian facilities at each leg of the roundabout, and the green areas show where the replanting is going to occur for all of the vegetation that's being taken out as part of the construction job. Slide briefly describes the schedule. The scoping and environmental phases are complete, and the design phase is scheduled for completion at the end of December. Construction funding will be accessed through the California Transportation Commission allocation process in March. And if the bidding process goes well, construction could start in summer or fall of 2023. This slide summarizes the funding plan. As I mentioned, the scoping and environmental phases are complete. The design phase is nearly complete, and the construction phase is fully funded through the State Highway Operation and Protection Program. This slide is a representation of the replanting plan proposed. So this is slightly rotated from the other graphic that I showed you. So just for orientation purposes, this direction off to the right is north, and this area is hopefully you can see my cursor. This area is the new park and ride lot, and then just north of that is where the majority of the replanting will occur. The replanting will be of California native species and will include California buckeye, western redbud, California wax myrtle, California bay laurel, and 3 different types of oak trees. And so you can see here the Latin name abbreviations and the amounts that will be planted. I'll be happy to list those out for you if anybody actually wants to know, but the oak trees will include valley oak, coast live oak, and black oak. And finally, this is the this slide is the landscape design for the center of the roundabout, which is a frequently asked question. The landscaping will be completely dry with no vegetation. And this is at the request of the county, since the Public Works Department is responsible for maintaining it. The design is a dry creek bed with decorative boulders and rocks. And the intent is to make it aesthetically pleasing, but not an attractive nuisance. We don't want people trying to hang out in the center. So that completes my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions that the committee members may have. Over to you, Musa.
Thank you, Shana. Any questions, to Shana?
Mute my audio.
I have one. Are you going to be removing any redwood trees, and are you going to replace the redwood trees?
There are no redwood trees out there, so there won't be any replacement of redwood trees.
Okay, good.
Can you, if you have any question, can you please use the raise hand? Don't see.
I think Jerry has a question.
Yeah, I'm trying to raise my hand, but not able to do yet. But anyway, since I've already rudely talked, Shana, do you have an estimated cost? Because this is going to back into some of my questions I have on the local street projects that are coming. There we go. Okay, and so it's $6 million is coming out of this, out of our funding. Out of that $35 million, 6 of it is for this project.
25 million, but yes, 6 million is Measure M.
Yeah. So I'm talking about the 35 million that's in Measure M for local street projects. And so 6 of it is going to be budgeted for that.
Yes.
For this.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, I think Jerry has a question also.
I just wanted to ask about the roundabout itself. It was pretty hard to tell from the diagram. Is the roundabout 1 lane or 2 lanes?
It has multi-lanes, so it's a hybrid, because there's only 1 lane once you get to the side where Bono Road is, but in the section where you transition from the northbound lanes to the eastbound lanes, there are multiples, or there can be multiples. We're starting off with mostly single lane, although there will be some merging that happens because of that transition. Okay. But there is room, because we designed it so that we could expand the roundabout when volume dictates that that's necessary.
Okay, I'm asking the question. I just returned from Europe and Amsterdam, and I noticed that almost all of their roundabouts are 2 lanes, and what it facilitates is you have through traffic, they take 1 lane, and if they're making a turn, they take a 2nd lane, and that seems to work really well. And it's a little confusing for me to start with, but once you get into it, you recognize why they're doing that.
Shana, is the presentation part of the packet? If not, I suggest if you can email it to members, because I had a hard time to see the configuration of the roundabout or the lanes. Members, you can look at it in more detail later.
Certainly, happy to do that.
Thank you. I don't see other hands raised, unless I'm missing anybody. Otherwise, we will move to the second presentation with David.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Let me pull up my screen as well. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So this presentation is on the US 101 Hearn Avenue Regional Multimodal Interchange. So this is a 3-phase project. So in Measure M, there was 3 different phases that were previously funded. The first phase widened the approaches to the Hearn Avenue interchange on Santa Rosa Avenue. The second phase did the western portion of the project west of the interchange. And the last phase, phase 3, is the interchange itself. And so this project has been going on for the last 15 years, and we're hoping to get it started soon. So to give you kind of a location of the project, is in South Santa Rosa. Near my cursor is the exact project area at 101 and Hearn Avenue, near the shopping centers on the east side of 101 and the residential communities and Roseland community on the west side of 101. This is a project that would help connect 101 between those existing areas and would benefit historically disadvantaged communities and several areas of persistent poverty in South Santa Rosa. To give you some background on why the project is needed, the existing Hearn Avenue interchange is only 1-lane each direction on the overcrossing, and there are no shoulders. And because of this, vehicles tend to back up, as you can see in the satellite image in the afternoon and in the mornings. That creates a safety risk because vehicles are all the way back on 101 during peak or travel. And this congestion and lack of shoulders delays emergency response times for fire engines and ambulances trying to get up from one side of 101 to the other. There's also no sidewalk on the north side of the overcrossing, and the south side has a discontinuous sidewalk. There's also no bike facilities on the overcrossing due to lack of shoulders, and the overcrossing itself has non-standard vertical clearance over US 101, and the bridge railings are also not crash worthy. These photos kind of show you the existing conditions out there for those of you that may not be familiar with it, showing the severe congestion that happens pretty much every day out there on southbound 101. You see drivers that get frustrated with the backup and will pull back into the mainline traffic, which is very dangerous, or they'll drive around other drivers to try to make turns. And you can see it's also not a good experience for bicycles or pedestrians who have to share a narrow sidewalk to try to safely cross the overcrossing. This is the current project design. It's a little different from what we showed you last year. The core of the project has not changed. It's now a new bridge with 2 lanes in each direction with a long center left turn lane to go as you go westbound on the project, and then additional turn lanes as you come off of southbound 101 to get to the overcrossing. The big change that has been made over the last year was to change what was previously a 2-way class 1 bike path that shared the facility between bicyclists and pedestrians on the south side of the overcrossing. And now we've split that into a separate sidewalk for pedestrians and a new separated bikeway based on committee feedback. So you can see this is the previous cross section. As I mentioned, it had a multi-use path on the south side of the overcrossing previously with a textured separation between the shoulder and the pathway. And then on the westbound or north side of the overcrossing was a class 2 bike lane. We changed this slightly, working with Caltrans in the city to do a 2-way class 4 bikeway, which is a separated protected bicycle facility. This will have roughly 4 feet in each direction for bicyclists, and then a 2-foot raised curb. And then it will still have a 4-foot shoulder between the curb and the vehicle lane. So this is much better configuration for both bicyclists and pedestrians, because now the pedestrians have a separate sidewalk that they don't have to worry about bicyclists getting in their way. So as I mentioned earlier, this project has a number of benefits. This will connect the existing 4-lane portions of Hearn Avenue to the west and east of the project. And as a result, it will improve local traffic circulation and improve emergency responder access. It will also improve multimodal access and connectivity and operations by including the bike path. And by eliminating a lot of the congestion on the overcrossing, it will also improve transit routes. Currently, Santa Rosa City Bus does not route buses across Hearn Avenue because of the congestion. And this would allow them to change their bus routes in the future to provide a direct connection from the neighborhoods to the west to the shopping opportunities on the east. And this will also, as I mentioned, improve the overall safety of the facility by eliminating the backups on 101. So project schedule, the environmental phase was completed in 2016. Final design is on track to be completed by March of next year, along with right-of-way. The final design package is being reviewed by Caltrans. The city previously received permits for the project. They need to be renewed. That should be a pretty quick process. And the right-of-way acquisitions are complete and utility relocations are underway. The project can go out to bid next summer as soon as the project is fully funded and funds are programmed and awarded. And so we're hoping to potentially start construction on the project in the fall of 2023, but more likely due to weather, it'd be probably spring 2024. So the project budget includes a number of different funding sources. The key issue over the last few years has been trying to come up with a funding plan to fully fund the project. The city has been very proactive in seeking state and federal grant opportunities to fund the project. However, they have not been successful yet. Working with the city over the last month, we've come up with a funding plan to potentially be able to move forward with construction next summer, assuming that all of our ducks are in a row and everything comes together. This is going to require a number of actions. The key thing for this committee is the Measure M component. As shown here, we're showing a total contribution of $17.2 million to the project. This will require an amendment to the Measure M expenditure plan that we'll be bringing back to this committee at a future meeting to add an additional $10 million to the project. That will bring the total construction amount up to the $13.45 million shown here. Those funds will be matched by a number of other funding sources. In September, the SCTA board approved committing $5 million of Senate Bill 1 local partnership program funds to the project. These are funds that were awarded by the California Transportation Commission to SCTA with the passage of Go Sonoma in 2020. And these funds have a very short timeline where they must be allocated and programmed to a project. Those funds must be programmed by June of next year. And so we are working with the city to come up with the rest of the funding, including Measure M, to be able to move forward with those funds. Tomorrow night at the Santa Rosa City Council, the City Council is going to be moving forward on an agreement between SCTA and the city to commit funds to that project, including local funds in the neighborhood of about $6.2 million to enable the construction to move forward. Those funds will be matched by Measure M and a number of other funding sources, including the $5 million of local partnership program funds that I mentioned. In addition, the city, due to the fact that this project is ready to go to construction now, is seeking to reallocate $3.4 million of state transportation improvement program funds that were previously committed to the Santa Rosa Junior College bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing to this project. In return, the city will be seeking other grant opportunities to backfill that project, which is a little further behind the Hearn Avenue Interchange project. The pedestrian overcrossing project won't be going to construction for another 18 months, and SCTA and the city will be partnering to pursue other grant opportunities to fully fund that project, which is another critical crossing of 101. Tomorrow, the city and SCTA and Caltrans will be submitting a grant request to the California Transportation Commission to come up with the remaining funding that are needed for the project. This is going to be $8.6 million from the competitive portion of the Senate Bill 1 local partnership program. We should find out if that funding is awarded by June of next year. And if that is successful, that will be the last funding that is needed for the $36.6 million construction phase of this key project. And for more information on the city's Measure M projects, including the Hearn Avenue Interchange, you can go to srcity.org/Measure M projects. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, David. I'll open it for questions. I have a question to start with. On one of the slides, the revised design, you showed, one side, the north side with the, two direction bike lane, and the other, side, the south side with only one lane. Is this the correct design or not?
This is the correct design. This is the most that we were able to accommodate on the existing width of the structure. Based on the previous design from last year and the revised design from this year, the width of the structure did not change. So we were only able to accommodate the protected bikeway on one side of the structure. Ideally, if the project had been looking at this previously years ago, we could have made the bridge wider to make both sides protected. However, we feel that the south side being protected will provide a great benefit because it'll connect to a future Class 1 bike facility that will be located west of this project, which will connect to the smart pathway just to the left of the project. And that project is being recommended for funding through MTC's OBAG process, and we should find out if that project is funded next year. But having the two-way class 4 protected bikeway connecting to that pathway on the south side of the road will provide a good connection for bicyclists.
But do you think it will, in reality, will it work that way? People will just use it as a one direction bike lane and the other side two-way bike lane?
So I believe the westbound class 2 bike lane will probably be used by bicyclists who are more of the experienced and more comfortable riding with traffic. The protected bikeway will be probably used by people who may be more concerned about traffic and be open for all ages and abilities to be able to use that protected bikeway. So really, this is a solution that can work for all different types of bicyclists, and we feel that this is a good design.
So my question, sorry to ask you my question, is it a budget related or right-of-way constraints that you did not, add, a two-way bike lane on the south side also?
So the bikeway is located on the south side. I'd have to defer to Chris Kapp again from the city, who's online, who can talk more about the reason why the north side westbound bike lane was not done protected as well.
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Chris Cabagan with the city of Santa Rosa. Again, what we're looking at in terms of the south side is a class 4 bikeway, and that was part of the city's connection of having Taylor Mountain, that regional trail, connect to Yolanda, connect to the Santa Rosa Avenue, connecting to Hearn Interchange, and then connecting to the Smart Trail as a sort of like a multi-use path. And so originally when we started this project, the scope of work kind of locked the project limits. And so as we started getting into this type of planning to make the project more attractive, that's where this whole class 4 multi-use bikeway path came. And so ultimately we don't need it on both sides, we just need it on one side. So that's how it came. To actually have it on both sides, that would require kind of like a change in the environmental clearance, because then the project limits have changed, the bridge structure starts to expand. And so again, what you're looking at is, I think this is just part of a portion of what the intent was for future developments, connecting again the Taylor Mountain proposed regional trail to the smart train path.
So adding a two-way bike lane on the north side, does nothing to the environmental clearance, but adding it to both sides, you have to do the clearance again?
I think, again, once you, oh, go ahead. Somebody want to speak?
To me, it does not make sense. I'll open, the discussion to other members because I don't want just to take the floor. I see Eris has a question, followed by Jake. We cannot hear you. Eris, we cannot hear you. Yeah, I'll move to Jake until you fix, your mic. Jake, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just a question about MTC and financing. Have the contacts been made with MTC in terms of any assurances that we can get on this project?
Yes, MTC has been working with staff to look at the
Testing.
Yeah, we can hear you, Iris.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. So we've been working with MTC staff for the amendment to the STIP funding, the 3.4 million that will be shifted from the bike ped overcrossing to this project. We're working closely with them and be going through the process to amend the 2022 State Transportation Improvement Program plan in next year in March March and May. And so they've been supportive of this effort, and they are hoping that this project will move forward quickly.
And our representatives on MTC, Supervisor Rabbit and Councilmember Fleming, they're on board?
We've made them aware. I know our chair has been talking directly with Councilmember Fleming of the need to do the STIP amendment, but I'm uncertain of her position on the matter. We'll find out tomorrow night at the City Council meeting.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jake. Eris, I hear your mic is back, you know.
Yeah, I think I got myself fixed now. Can you put that cross-section slide back up again? I share Musa's concerns about this. I'm not a big fan of two-way bikeways that are short and aren't connected at either end. And I hear that there's this desire in the future for it to connect at either end, but my understanding that this is right now is just on the bridge, correct? That it's not going to connect to anything right away on either end.
Yeah, so currently the two-way bikeway would come from Corby Avenue to Santa Rosa Avenue. As you noted, Eris, right now it would not connect to anything. But as I mentioned earlier, the city is applying for OVAG 3 funds that this committee supported to do a class 1 bikeway on the south side of Hearn that would connect to the smart path just to the west of the self-storage and lumber yard there. So in the future, project would provide the connection.
Okay, but that's my concern is at the Santa Rosa Avenue end, right? Whenever there's a two-way bike path that just dumps back into a regular street that doesn't have a two-way path right there, right? So why would, like, okay, maybe if I'm going southbound on Santa Rosa Avenue and I'm going to cross Hearn, I'm going to stay on the northbound side because, right, we want cyclists to ride on the right side of the road and not on the left side of the road. If I'm going northbound, well, either way, I still have to cross to get on the other side. Show me the cross section again with all those widths and stuff. Yes. So if you made that one way instead of two way, made all of the travel lanes 11 instead of 11.3, that gets you a little bit there. Maybe take the median down a little bit, make the buffered lane on the south side one way. That should give you enough extra inches to buffer the line on the north side as well. So you would had a one-way buffer on either side. That in my mind would seem preferable, so that no matter which direction somebody's going, there is protection from the vehicles. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of short two-way lanes that intersect and dump you out onto roads that don't accommodate them.
You know her?
Yes.
Yeah, he knows me.
Give to answer or feedback about this, or give it to the question to somebody else.
David, I think Rob Sprinkle is on the call, so he may be able to respond to the bike connection there.
Sure, Rob, if you're on.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a little confused because I was thinking that protected bike lanes were something that the bike community wanted. So I'm a little taken back by Eris's comments.
No, but you're only putting him on one side.
Correct. And that's because only one side is going to have the continuation of the multi-use path to the smart. We can only fit it on one side to continue to the multi-use path over to Hearn. So if it was on the north side as well, we don't have the right of way to do it on the north side. And on the north side, then you would have to cross at Hearn anyway to get down to where the multi-use path would be to the west of the intersection. So not everyone who's
crossing Hearn is going to get back and go to the north-south path. What people just continuing west need to be safe too.
Correct. So there is a bike lane in the westbound direction.
It's not protected.
Correct. If they want to use a protected bike lane, they could use the south side of the street.
Right, and then at that the both ends, they have to cross to get onto it. If you're going south on Santa Rosa Avenue, and then you need to go west.
Yeah, you would
Oh.
continue from the bike lane from Santa Rosa Avenue across Hearn, and you would get on at the intersection. Yes, correct. Thank you.
So you're telling
David.
me that we would have to cross this busy road at either end in order to be on a protected bike lane if we're continuing west on Hearn?
If you wanted to use the protected bike lane, yes, but you still have the option of using the class 1 bike lane. If you're coming down Santa Rosa Avenue, you're in the class 1, you're in the class 2 bike lane on the entire length of Santa Rosa Avenue, I would imagine. So I'm not, so crossing another intersection at Hearn would not be a big leap. If you, the protected bike lane will continue to the south along the west side of Santa Rosa Avenue. Yeah, go south on Santa Rosa Avenue. In the future, it's actually a wider sidewalk. It'll actually continue south, and then we'll cross at Yolanda and go Yolanda all the way to Taylor Mountain. So that's part of a larger network that we're planning for at the multi-use path.
And when is that planned for?
We can only build pieces as we have funding available to do, but that's, like I said, that's what's in our master plan.
Rob, if I believe on Mendocino Avenue restriping projects, you are proposing protecting bike lane.
On Mendocino, we're actually putting in buffered bike lanes.
Buffer bike lanes.
Buffer bike lanes, yes.
Is it, the bike master plan for the city, does it call for, like changing, the bike lanes to be, buffered or protected bike lanes? Or
So where we have adequate right of way, we do have the flexibility of adding buffered bike lanes where we can, and we've been focusing on doing that in all of our planning and designs that we've been doing. We've just done it on Hohen Avenue, on Summerfield. We actually removed a lane of travel, added buffered bike lanes. We're going to be doing it on North Dutton Street. We're actually going to be installing protected bike lanes. And on 4th Street, we're also going to be installing buffered bike lanes and portions that are protected. So that's what we've heard from the community, is the call to try to put in protected bike lanes wherever we can. So we've taken that to heart and have really tried to incorporate that into our designs.
No, I see that, and I appreciate that, Rob, and I appreciate how much the city is moving in that direction. But my whole point was just being that I would like to see protected bike lane on the north side as well. And it seems to me that if it was one way on each side, that could be accommodated. But we don't need to take up any more time in this meeting around this. We can talk more about it offline.
Okay, thank you, Aris. I share your concerns, but I'll give it to Steve now. Steve, are you online? Steve, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I'm curious about what's happening to the cost of all of this. We're in an inflationary cycle right now. Do we have leeway? Will we manage to keep the costs under control?
Yeah, so at this point, we've built a little bit of a contingency into the project budget. But as you mentioned, Steve, the bidding environment is kind of unpredictable right now with inflation. We're hoping that things will stabilize over the winter, and then that project can get funded next summer and then go out to bid. But it's really unpredictable. And so part of the reason why we're trying to move forward with the project now is because costs keep escalating. Every time that the project gets delayed due to lack of funding, it's going to get more expensive. And so that's why we're trying to move forward now.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I see Tom raising your hand.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to add a comment after Aris's observations. First, Rob, thank you very much for the discussion, and especially for identifying the other areas that you're putting these buffered and protected lanes in throughout the city. That is what many in the transportation advocacy cycling community have been asking for. And to Eris's point here, I appreciate the need for protection in lanes, but I also see some value in having a two-way lane on the south side for folks that are just trying to avoid having to make another crossing and maybe willing to do the unprotected lane on the north side. So it's nice to have the option of both sides as to having single lane on only a single route on one side, because that does force you to end up on the sidewalk or in violation. As a bicycle rider, we see plenty of violations. So giving options is I think almost always a better solution. So I'm happy with this design as I see it today. Thank you.
Jerry, thank you, Tom. Tom, we cannot hear you. Jerry, sorry, we cannot hear you.
I understand. You have to take it off of mute in order not to do that. I like the protected bike lane as well. I don't do a lot of biking because I'm not that great a bike rider. And I don't like to go anyplace unless there's a protected bike lane. And the two-way traffic, again, I saw it in Europe quite a bit in the Netherlands, and that works fine, even though it might be on just one side of the road. And as long as the long-term plan says we're trying to do this throughout, and that seems like a good compromise. One question I have, though, is during the construction, what are the plans as far as whether the bridge will be open? Will it be open for one-way traffic, two-way traffic, or will it be closed?
I believe the bridge is going to be constructed in stages such that it will remain open at all times and traffic will be shifted back and forth. So there will be at least one lane open each direction, though there may be some closures over the weekends for demolishing the old bridge and moving traffic back and forth.
Jake, I see your hand is raised. Do you still have questions? Or?
I forgot to put it down.
Okay, thank you.
Lower hand.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
I don't see any other hands unless I'm missing, any other questions to David. I see none. Thank you, David, and the city staff for the presentation and for answering the questions. I hear, there is, a preference to have, the two-way lanes, on both sides, the north and the south side, that's the optimal solution, and if the design team can look into that, that would be appreciated, We'll move on with our agenda for the draft Measure M annual report, the 21-22. Shana, you have a presentation?
Thank you, Musa. I'm just going to go through what was sent out to the committee. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation per se, but let me go ahead and share my screen so that you all can sort of follow along as I walk you through it. Hopefully everybody can see this. So what we sent out, it was a draft of the Measure M annual report. And what we were asking for is, so what was sent out specifically was the text, tables, and information sheets that will make up the meat of the Measure M annual report. We ask that the committee members have the opportunity to review this material before we make it into the glossy, graphically designed, bound copy that you end up with, so that should there be wholesale changes or things that really need to be addressed, that we have the opportunity to change that before it's already made into this final product. So we did send that out for committee members to review last week. It was sent out on the 21st, and I would like to say thank you to the members that did respond. I heard from Gina and from Tom Banning. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity to review them before the meeting. If you haven't had the opportunity to review yet, but would still like to, then I would say that we could probably take comments until middle of this week, probably Wednesday. And as you can see by what's shown on the screen, the schedule for delivery is to send it out for a draft for the committee members to have the opportunity to review and then to receive those comments back. Here's today, 11/28, where we talk about the annual report itself. And then should there be a need, then we have the opportunity to schedule a special meeting where we could come back and look at the changes that were made if there were changes that were significant. We have yet in my history of doing this annual report had the need for a special meeting. That being said, we want to make sure that the opportunity is there should there be questions or the need for such an event. We will expect to get a final product from the graphic artist and then email something out that looks final to you in January. And then we would seek a recommendation of approval to the board for January meeting on January 30th. And then we would take the final document to the board on February 6th. Now, February 6th is a special meeting of the board because the regular meeting is when it would be scheduled is on a holiday. It's a little early. So with that, I would like to just go over, for the folks that aren't necessarily familiar with the layout of the annual report, I'd like to just go through it really quickly. I'm not going to linger on any of the individual sections. I just kind of want to talk about what the layout is. So in the beginning, you get the executive summary, which gives you a brief description of each one of the programs. So you talk about the overall program, then the local streets rehabilitation and local bus transit programs. Those are the apportionment programs where we just give money out to the jurisdictions based on what's laid out in Measure M for maintenance and for transit operations. And then there's the 101 program. We are getting close to finishing that program. It's very exciting. We've been working on this for a number of years, so it's nice to be coming into the very end of the 101 program. We'll talk about the local street projects program and the bicycle and pedestrian program. And then finally, there is the passenger rail program. So then we talk briefly about the future of Measure M, which is Go Sonoma. As you know, was, as David mentioned earlier in his presentation, was approved in 2020 and will pick up at the end of Measure M and go for another 20 years. It is also a 1/4 sales tax. So the layout is such that we talk overview of the entire program for all of the programs for the year. So we try to summarize that in Table 1, and then moving on to the next section, we talk about the apportionment programs, which receive 20% of the measure. And so we talk in this first table in this section about what each jurisdiction received in the LSR program, and then how they spent, what they spent, and if they're carrying forward a balance. And then because the committee has asked for it, we also show the second table, which is a summary to date or to the end of the fiscal year of what they have received for the length of the measure in the LSR program. That we move to the next section, which is laid out the same way essentially for local bus transit, where we talk about what the transit agencies have received and then what they've received for the length of the measure. And then a brief summary based on what is supplied by the transit operators. That's the same for the LSR program. We provide what was in their annual reports. So sometimes that information is a little bit different depending on which jurisdiction we're talking about. We do try to make it as uniform as possible, but we don't get the same information from everyone. So we do try to make that as uniform as possible, but it's not always possible. And then with the 101 program, this is where we start the project-specific programs. So in addition to these summary tables, we also include what we like to call the information sheets. And these are project-specific pages that talk about what the project scope is, what any additional details are included, and then the status of the project is. And just as for the ease of review, anything that's been highlighted on these project information sheets indicates that that portion of the project has been completed. That's just a quick visual on what we know to be done. One of the project information sheets has a funding table on it, and then that is the case for all of these, all of the rest of the projects that are listed in the annual report. With that, I don't want to scroll through and make you dizzy when you have the opportunity to do it at your leisure. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will hand it back to you and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Shana, for your work. If I may suggest, I'm not sure if your schedule allows. Mainly, the draft came just before the Thanksgiving holidays, and probably many members did not have the chance, to review it. Would it be possible to extend your deadline instead of this Wednesday to the middle of next week, to give an opportunity to other members to review or to provide comments?
If that's the case, Mr. Chair, then we would, right now, we have the time carved out for when we would need to hold a special meeting, which is the 13th through the 15th, which is that next week. So it would be difficult to get all of that together and still bring something to you in that amount of time. I think probably extend it to, yes, I think we could probably extend it to the 7th and try. It might be close though, just FYI, it might not be great, but that's only if we need the special meeting.
Yeah, if it is difficult, we'll just, ask the members to give their review by Wednesday. I don't want to mess up your schedule.
Well, and I'm hoping that there won't be a need for a special meeting. We try to leave that out in case it's needed, but hopefully there won't be a need. I don't know that we would need a wholesale change that would require a special meeting, but I will leave it up to you. Certainly I can extend the deadline to the 7th, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Dennis, I see your hand raised for a question, please.
I do. Shauna, first of all, thank you for that. And two is that I apologize for not getting the comments to you before, but I didn't have a chance to review it until over the weekend. So, but my question has to do with really the transition between Measure M and Go Sonoma, and also as it relates to the local street projects. You have a large balance left there that $35 million, but in your presentation earlier, and as James pointed out in the last questions I had at the last meeting regarding the $12 million that we didn't get funded in last year's budget that carried forward to this year's budget, it sounds like that 35 million, 17 million is planned to go towards Hearn. You got 7 million that's going to Fulton Road, and you got 6 million that's going to the 116, 121 intersection, totaling $30 million of the 35 million. And you still then have 3 years of revenue coming in at $9 million. And we still have a large list of projects that we included on the original Measure M. So my question really gets to how's that transition going to work? How are you planning? And should we not explain that, since this is the first time, the first annual report that talks about an approved Go Sonoma plan and Measure M and the unmet needs from the Measure M that we haven't completed?
Yes. I think,
Yeah, there's a lot there. So anyway,
I think that intent is to address it. I don't know that we're going to be able to address it in this year's annual report. I think the intent is to address it with the upcoming Go Sonoma strategic plan, which has yet to be written. So it's on the cusp, but yes.
Yeah, and I just wondered, since James' revelation about the budget is that there's actually projects that you budget every year that's in your budget. I don't ever remember that ever coming to this committee saying, hey, this is what's in our budget as to projects we think we're going to get done from one year to the next. And so that would be the only thing. I just wondered if in this year's budget, what exactly is budgeted in there, and if for local streets and roads, I don't know, some kind of transition between where we're at and what we're doing and how we get it done would be great. And that's my comment, and I have no clue how to get it done. So I leave it in your capable hands.
Thank you. And I totally agree with you. And I think that the intent is there. We know that we have Go Sonoma coming up, and we know that we have to address what's left. I would say that what's in the budget is what's programmed. So when we went through the programming process for the strategic plan in that was just approved in 2022, that includes programming for what we expect to come forward till the end of the measure. And that's included in this year's annual budget. So there's some unspent, really large numbers in there that are included in the budget. And that's where that differential is happening. But I see David's come off of mute, so he may have stuff to add that I will clam up now and let somebody else.
Thanks, Shauna. So as Shauna mentioned, the majority of the carryover projects in the SCTA budget are Hearn Avenue and the money that was appropriated last year for the widening of Fulton Road, which is currently in construction. Besides that, the remaining projects in the LSP program largely are either smaller or they're pretty big projects like the Railroad Pengrove area projects or the Fulton Road Interchange project. In the spring, SCTA is going to be putting out an RP to start a feasibility study of the Fulton Road Interchange at Highway 12. However, that's a number of years away. And the county is currently doing a study in the Pengrove area as well that may lead to a feasibility study of the US 101 Railroad Interchange as well. Those two projects are going to probably have the majority of the remaining LSP funds. And as you know, the program is going to end in 2025. And we will still have some fund balances in the LSP program that won't go away. They're still committed to those projects and still approved by the voters for those projects. So we'll be dealing through that the next number of years. As Shauna mentioned, we're working on the Go Sonoma first strategic plan, which will be done by December of next year. And right after that, we'll be probably doing what may be the final Measure M strategic plan. It may be a combined strategic plan going forward after that, or maybe a legacy document that just gets updated as projects continue to move forward. But we still have to figure out what is going to happen with those fund balances, whether those are another opportunity to do loans between Go Sonoma and Measure M to advance Go Sonoma projects, or if those legacy Measure M projects move forward in the next 5 years is something we need to figure out.
So David, in your presentation for the Hearn Avenue, you mentioned, a shortfall of $8.4 million, still needs to be funded, so is there a contingent, plan, if, that application will not go through and the design is ready and construction, can be done, like the extra money or the extra funds, be used, to fund that project?
Yeah, so for the Hearn Avenue Interchange project, as I mentioned earlier, we are applying for 8.6 million in state funds for that project. If that grant does not happen, as part of the agreement that is going to the Santa Rosa City Council tomorrow night, the city's agreeing to backfill that funding so that the project can stay on schedule and move forward with construction next summer, no matter what. So there's no need for additional Measure M funds on Hearn beyond what we'll be committing to that project. As I mentioned earlier, we will be bringing a Measure M expenditure plan amendment to this committee and the board in the future. And so as part of that item, we have to figure out what projects are not moving forward that can contribute additional funds to Hearn. So some projects will be having less funds going forward because they're not moving forward, so that the additional 10 million can get programmed to Hearn. And we'll be touching on a number of other issues on other Measure M LSP projects that may or may not be moving forward or need additional funds.
So what you will bring forward to our committee, not just the Hearn Avenue, a full analysis, for the different, projects that cannot be completed and where to shift the money around. Is that right?
Right. We'll be looking at several other projects. It may not be the entire local streets projects program, but it'll be several projects that will be recommending to do adjustment to them in the future.
Okay, thank you, David. I see Jerry, you have a question?
Yeah, a question and a couple of comments. Number one is, I don't have a copy of the draft. For some reason, it wasn't sent to me. And actually looking forward to looking at it, because as a relatively new member of the committee, I have the hardest time looking at the budget or looking at the balance sheet and figuring out what I'm actually reading. And I'm hoping that if I read the draft, I'll understand the outline of what we're actually managing. I've only been in the county for 6 years. So Measure M, I had to actually look up before I showed up for my first meeting. But anyway, can I please get a copy of the draft?
I'll answer for Shana, if I may say. The draft, there's a link on the agenda under the item. You click on it, you get the draft, there. I don't know if you receive the agenda, you can see the draft.
I didn't get the agenda either.
Oh, really?
Check your spam folder.
No, I think we got it worked out today, Jerry. Thanks for your help with that. I can resend it to you right now.
Thank you. Tom?
Oh, welcome, Jerry. And I would just add that you might want to take a look at the previously completed Measure M annual report, just for the finished product from a prior year, because this draft version will not have the graphics completed, and that might be helpful as you're beginning a review. I wanted to just say I think Dennis's concerns are well expressed, and I appreciate that it's tough for the staff to plan for this, and you don't want to put yourselves in a straitjacket prematurely. So maybe some of David's comments immediately after Shauna spoke, that general narrative overview of the transition that's planned, getting something like that into the annual report would be very helpful to all of us, including the jurisdictions, and just give everybody a sense of where we're going with this. We are transitioning from Measure M being the only funding vehicle, local funding vehicle, to Go Sonoma now being the future one. And as you did in your narrative just now to us, David, to just foreshadow some of the high level decisions that will need to be made. Maybe not all the specifics you got into, and certainly the specifics about specific projects, but the or maybe some specifics that we do know are budgeted and backfilled by the city, for example. But beyond that, to identify the transition, the overview of the transition that we're entering into.
Yeah, we could definitely add some narrative, kind of outline the thoughts I had in general terms.
Thank you, Tom, David, Shauna. Any more questions for the group? I don't see any hands rising, so we'll move to the next agenda item, the financial statements with James Cameron.
So the financial statements this week are just really the boilerplate, right? So they include the actual financials from our financial system, which is EFS, Enterprise Financial System, as well as two sets of tables, right? So the first set of table is just for this fiscal year, fairly light on transactions, and then the next set of tables is the next 6 pages, which is the inception to date of the program itself. I don't have anything unusual to point out. I do think that things like the annual report and the strategic plan do really bring these numbers to life. And we've had a really good discussion. Dennis has brought this up many times over the last few years, how we will transition. I'd like to just take a minute to share screen to our last strategic plan to get into what's happening with some of these numbers and show you how your strategic plan or your annual report can bring those numbers to life, if you will. If I click share now, can I get a head nod or a head shake that you folks can see my screen? Thank you, Brian. Yes. And so what we're looking at here is we're looking at our local street project program. It is because these are somewhat dated projects in that they're roadway capacity, capacity increasing projects for the most part. They're adding highway lane, or not highway lanes, but road lanes. They're very expensive projects, and they include a 1-to-1 match. There is some that are not moving forward as fast as what was anticipated back in 2004. So when we have this discussion about expenditure plan amendments for Measure M, it really doesn't affect those other programs. It affects primarily this local street projects program. The other programs are, highly successful. Those dollars will all be spent, and then some most likely will require little or no amendment as the measure closes out. But going through this list from the top, you'll see that you have the Pen Grove project, which has a total programming of just less than $2 million, where it has $19 million in the expenditure plan. That's $17 million. Airport Boulevard and 116-121, fully programmed out. Forestville Bypass, fully programmed out. This is for improvements in the Forestville area. Old Redwood Highway, that's that new interchange in Petaluma, fully programmed out, built and constructed. Hearn is the one where David was referring to an expenditure plan amendment. We have taken the resolution to this committee as well as to the SCTA board for an additional $10 million to go to Hearn Avenue. Farmers Lane has a significant balance available. And then you can see River Road and Bodega Highway. Those are very large multi-million-dollar projects that only have $1 million available and have not moved forward. So Fulton Avenue does have just less than $10 million available. If you add all these up, you get into looking more at our cash flow for the local street projects program. So if that programming was to stay fixed, what I just showed you, at the end of the measure, the number is just less than $30 million of unprogrammed or available LSP balance that either needs to go to one of, goes right now based our policy needs to go to one of those projects. And that's what we'll be taking to the board to Citizens Advisory Committee, to you all first, before it goes to the board. But it's that $35 million that's within the financials that's our current balance that we're sitting on. But there is projects moving forward and advancing that will have expenditures that happen. There'll be new revenue that comes in, current projection, a little less than $30 million, where we need to figure out the best way to expend those funds in our county. With that, I will remind folks that there is some good forecasting information in last month's Citizens Advisory Committee packet that HDL put together that talks about, how revenue has been very strong the last 2 fiscal years. We're expecting a pretty flat fiscal year going forward before we return to those 2 or 3% increases to close out the measure in the last couple of years. With that, I'll stop sharing, answer any questions on LSP, the strategic plan, or the financials that are available for all of you in the packet.
Thank you, James. In fact, I have a question about, the surplus, like when the measure ends in, 2025, what will happen to this money, and the projects, the unfunded projects like Pengrove, for example, will it go away or will it be transferred to, the Sonoma, measure?
Yeah, so it's really going to be based on input from this committee as well as the board to decide any expenditure plan adjustments that happen. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you exactly what's going to happen. Based on our current policy, we are looking to make sure that as many of those projects on the list that are on the list now get funded. So, kind of like the project before anybody else is the project that's already on the list, not trying to expand the list and make it a, essentially any project to move forward. So looking for projects that aren't moving forward and then projects that need money. To give you an example though, like for Highway 101, we do have a fund balance at the end of the measure in 2025, but on Highway 101, we have financial commitments to Caltrans through cooperative agreements that extend, out to 2032 right now. So those funds are going to stay in a Highway 101 account, and they're going to be looking to meet resource agency planting requirements as well as, Highway 101 landscaping visual planting requirements. So it doesn't go away. It keeps doing its intended purpose on a parallel path as we're implementing Go Sonoma.
But is it, within the legal, boundaries, when a measure ends, can you continue, like working on projects beyond that measure?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So those dollars will be programmed out so that there won't be any programming capacity available. The actual dollars themselves will be attributed to projects or work that's going to be happening. And those dollars are allowed to move forward. There won't be any bonding, right? The bonding will be all paid off by the end of that's actually the end of 2024. In December is our last bond payment for our 2015 bonds. But yeah, this committee will continue to get reports on how we're expending Measure M funds for the foreseeable future as these dollars are expended. There just won't be new revenue. The new revenue will be part of Go Sonoma and part of that strategic plan and the initial programming recommendations that the committee here and the board has acted on.
Got it, James. Thank you. Any questions to James? I see none. So we'll move to the Board of Directors agenda. Who is handling that?
Hi, so I did include the SCTA RCPA Board of Directors agenda with this agenda packet. Would you like me to display this agenda to the committee? Otherwise, we're available for questions if there are any.
Yeah, can you please display it?
Yeah. Okay, can I get a confirmation that it's displayed correctly? Yeah. All right, so on consent, we have the meeting notes from October and a resolution to authorize teleconferencing, the 2023 meeting schedule, the finances for Q1, the fiscal year 21-22 audits, a resolution of commendation for directors Sarah Glade Gurney, Mark Landman, and Delinda Fisher, a funding agreement with the Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District, contracts with Fair and Pier, amendment to a cooperative agreement for the Santa Rosa Creek Trail and Mark West Springs Road, and then for SMART, and then a federal funding obligation update. And then for the regular calendar, staff will be presenting on State Route 37 updates, the Hearn Avenue interchange for SCTA items, for RCPA update on sequestration, non-proliferation treaty, and then an update from the Funding for Climate ad hoc.
Thank you, Drew. In the item, I did not get it, is the board, considering, the 2023 meetings to go to in-person or to continue virtual meetings?
So the governor will let the emergency powers expire at the end of February. So we are anticipating going back to in-person meetings starting in March. Staff will be bringing some more information on that at the January meeting. So thank you for bringing that up, Vice Chair Abbasi. But starting in March, there is an anticipation of in-person meetings with the Brown Act coming back, and the Brown Act will have those strict requirements. So committee members will be expected to be in person to be in attendance. So more information to come in January.
Thank you, Drew.
Yeah, and then the first meeting for the board in 2023 will be February 6th. So December 12th and then February 6th.
Thank you. Any questions, Drew? I see none. We'll move to announcements. Any announcements?
So yeah, so this is Nancy Adams from Santa Rosa. And I just want to say that there's going to be a transition with my position. I'm going to be leaving the city here mid-December. So in the interim, I think Rob Sprinkle is going to kind of share my load until they fill my position. So I would expect that when we do our CAC presentation in March, that might be under the leadership of Rob, unless they've hired and filled my position. So anyway, just a transition, and just want to let the committee know.
Thank you, Nancy, for your long service to the city.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? See none. I think, is there a motion to adjourn? Yeah, we are adjourned. Thank you for being patient with me on this meeting. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Good night, all.